All right, everybody, we have some pretty bad news. Russia has invaded Ukraine. What happened is two regions in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk, have declared independence. Putin immediately recognized them as two sovereign nations and signed a military alliance with them. And then what he did is sent in what he describes as peacekeepers to kind of protect them from big scary Western Ukrainian government. What this means, though, is these two regions they're still part of Ukraine. Just because they say they're different countries doesn't mean they're not still part of the country. And so Putin has invaded. And see, some people, Hassan Piker, I saw him on Twitter. He was saying that like prior to this, because after last Wednesday when everyone said Russia was going to invade and then they didn't, people like Hassan, and I'm not bashing on Hassan, it's just I saw him do this. We're saying doing basically a victory dance, oh, see, we told you Russia wasn't going to invade. I never bought into that because we knew why everyone got it wrong. They got it wrong because Zelensky, that's the president of Ukraine, had basically there was he made a comment and it was basically misinterpreted. Kind of a joke that got lost in translation. So this led to a bunch of news outlets misreporting the story. That did not mean that there weren't still a bunch of troops there. That did not mean that Russia wasn't going to eventually invade. And I kind of always put it as 50-50 whether or not they would. They've done this kind of build up before and nothing happened. But they also annexed Crimea in 2014. There was also the incursion into Georgia. So it's not unheard of. I always thought it was kind of 50-50. And unfortunately, the worst scenario has happened. What is the U.S. going to do in response to this? Almost certainly, we're going to slap some very big sanctions on Russia. I think that's unfortunate because, while I don't like what the Russian government is doing, big sanctions that hurt the civilians are not going to help. It's not going to help the situation. You're just going to be hurting the Russian people. Targeted sanctions, those could help against specific Russian oligarchs, but it's really probably not going to help that much. And then what we also probably will do is be sending weapons into Western Ukraine, arming the government militias. I also don't support this. I think that I get the argument. I 100% support the right of the Ukrainian people to self-defense. But I think that just sending more weapons in is going to make the situation more deadly, more violent. I just don't see it realistically. It's not going to solve what happened. So I get the argument for sending weapons, but I'm against it. Worst case scenario, us or NATO, other NATO countries, send in actual troops, and they're fighting Russian soldiers. That would be the worst case scenario because something like that, all of a sudden, it's on TV. A U.S. soldier just died fighting a Russian soldier. That's how this turns into a World War III kind of scenario. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that I hope it doesn't happen. It could happen, but I don't think it will. What we're likely going to see next is a lot of fighting in Ukraine. That's what I think. I think that because what's happened is basically the two regions that have declared independence, they control, so they already controlled some territory. This isn't out of nowhere. They already controlled territory in eastern Ukraine. But what they've said their borders are is beyond what they currently control, meaning that there's now, it's always been contested territory, but now there's even more contested territory, so there will likely be fighting over that newly contested territory. And I think that's going to, because we're probably going to, like I said, I don't support arms sales, or probably just going to give them arms. I don't support that, but we probably will. This will likely lead to a lot of fighting, a lot of death. Whatever negotiations are still on the table, I would have said before that a legitimate agreement that Ukraine would not join NATO could have been enough to keep Russia at bay. That ship has sailed. What does it mean at this point? I don't know. Is there pressure we can put on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Maybe. But basically, obviously, sanctions are better than military conflict. Proxy fighting is better than actually sending in troops. So there's a range to this thing. Even though I disagree with some of it, if Nord Stream 2, if putting pressure on Nord Stream 2 meant that we're not going to send actual soldiers in, that's obviously preferable. So there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a good chance that there's some new information by the time you're watching this video. But of the two sides, I would say the worst case has happened. Russia has invaded. There was a chance that they weren't going to. I think that there was a good chance that Putin didn't even know that he was going to invade. People have said that this was the plan from the beginning. I'm not so entirely sure about that, but he has at this point. We'll have to stay updated. I'll try to keep you guys as up to date as I can. If you haven't already, you should subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.